Hello, West Ham Network. I hope you're well. It's Holly, and today we are going to be talking about the number of points that Julian Lopetegui will need from the next 4 games to potentially remain head coach. So let's get started. Yes, West Ham Network. So as we know, it has not been a great start to the season, to put it kindly. Currently, we sit in 14th position in the league on 12 points. Technically, we're only 6 points off 7th position in the league, but we're also only 5 points away from the relegation zone. So it's all starting to feel rather stressful and rather worrying as we see those European hopes almost start to sneak away if we're not careful. So obviously, I know when we have form like we are, you're probably saying, what on earth are you talking about with European hopes? But I'm never going to give up on that dream because ultimately that is what we need a manager to be bringing us back towards European football spots. So today we're going to be discussing the number of points that we need from the next 4 games and what this could mean for Julian Lopetegui. So if you enjoy this video, please do give it a thumbs up and also drop us a comment to support the channel. So it's been reported that currently it's too soon for the board to consider getting rid of Lopetegui, despite the fact that we're not meeting the expectations that we had for how he was going to do as our manager and how we were going to do as a team this season. So I did a little video on this a while back talking about how we typically as a club do give managers a lot more time than others when it comes to settling that manager in, giving them a lot more games in charge than most clubs do, even when we're not getting those results that we want, whereas other clubs often just part ways if they're not impressed pretty quickly. So personally, I do believe that managers need time to settle in, but they're also, for me, to stick with a manager, you need that clear vision or pathway of how we improve, what we're trying to achieve, and how we're going to do that. Currently, that's what's frightening me, is that I can't see that with Lopetegui. I'm not a massive fan of clubs sacking managers after a few bad games and then starting again. And we've seen it with certain clubs where it's like a merry-go-round of managers, and ultimately clubs aren't settled, the players aren't settled, the fans aren't settled, everything becomes a bit of a mess. So you can't do that regularly. You can't chop and change all the time. But I do think you need realistic timelines of when you have to part ways with a manager to save your season. We know how important a single place in the Premier League is, whether you finish 13th or 14th, and what this means for budget, for upcoming transfer windows, what it means when it comes to European spots or not getting Europe, and then what that means for the appeal you bring to other players that you might try and bring in the transfer window. So all of these things have a massive knock-on effect, and you can't underestimate that. And because of that, you've got to know when the right time is to cut ties. And the big question mark at the moment is obviously fans feel that it may now be the time to get rid of Lopetegui, but we're not entirely sure who we bring in that would make a massive difference currently. And the club think that more time needs to be given. So basically, it's the perfect storm. We've got the high expectations. We've got the big investment in the summer. We've got aiming to improve from where we have been. And we've got hopes of returning to European football, all starting from the beginning of this season. And the BBC reports are suggesting that if things don't start to improve by December, this is when those questions are going to start being asked. So based on this timeline, what I'm going to be doing in this video is we're going to be taking a look at our next 4 games, taking us up to the 9th of December, when it appears that pressure is going to ramp up behind the scenes on Lopetegui if we're not getting those results. So the first game we've got of those is against Newcastle. They are never easy. They've not been conceding loads. They've picked up some big wins as well. So they're going to be a pretty tough opposition. Then on the 30th of November, we've got Arsenal at home. Historically, we've put in pretty good performances against the more difficult sides. And we know that Arsenal are scoring a lot this season. So our defence is going to have to be on top form going into that game. Then on the 3rd of December is Leicester away. So that one feels a little bit like a 6-pointer at the moment because Leicester are 1 place below us in the league. We've got a very similar goal difference. So this is a game that we really have to be winning. And then finally, I think the one that is probably going to predict what the coming months look like more than anything, we face Wolves at home, which is one that we literally cannot lose, to be honest. I know we have a lot of must-win games, but this one really does feel like it to me. They are 19th in the league. They've lost 7 of their 11 games. And I think if we haven't done much in the games that I just mentioned, that this one against Wolves could be the nail in the coffin, because you can't justify not picking up points against a side like that unless you get super unlucky and your form is good. So yeah, it's going to depend a lot on, I think, those 4 games and what we can actually do. But the question that I've got for you is, How many points do you think that we will get from those games, realistically, first of all? And how many would you need to be comfortable with Julian Lopetegui remaining head coach after those games? So drop us a comment down below in that section with your thoughts. I think the reason this feels like a really significant turning point is we've got Bournemouth, Brighton, and Southampton after those, which would then be ideal first games for a new head coach to get up to speed and would give us a chance to recover some points that we've desperately needed. If we're losing those games that I just spoke about, like the Leicesters and the Wolves, obviously going up against Bournemouth, Brighton, and Southampton, you don't have high expectations, and that could be potentially 9 points, which is absolutely season changing, and would make a massive difference. Because after those 3 games, we've got a really tricky spell on the way. So I think if we were to then wait those 3 games and then bring a new manager in, we could find ourselves in a hard spot, because I don't think it'd be easy for any manager to find their feet with a team that's all over the place, with very little time, games coming thick and fast, and the opponents that we have are not pretty. So just running through those games quickly. Between the 29th of December and the 22nd of February, we have got Liverpool, Man City, Fulham, Palace, Villa, Chelsea, Brentford, and Arsenal. So we're in a position where it is so important to not be throwing away points when we have games that should be easier to win on paper. Because if we go into those games desperately needing points, I think it's going to be a recipe for disaster, because stress and panic is going to set in. Confidence is already low in the players, and I think it'll be even worse. And I think we play best at West Ham when we play confident football. I mean, I guess it's the same with every club, that when you're confident, you try these skills, you try these passes, and they do play off, and you catch teams sort of off guard a little bit more, because you will play faster football rather than being scared and trying to play the safe pass. But I think we are running out of time to be able to pick these points up, because the knock-on impact of wasting these points is going to be more pressure, more stress, potentially a later appointment of a new head coach, which would then put that head coach in a bad position, because they're starting basically against the tide, to be honest, with those kind of games. So it's going to be a huge couple of months at the club, but I'm just hoping that we're pleasantly surprised. Ever the optimist, I'm going to predict that we will get 7 points from those 4 games, 2 wins, 1 draw, and a loss. And if I had to guess, I'll say the loss will be against Wolves, because it never makes logical sense, does it? I find it really hard to say how many points I would be happy with Lopetegui getting for him to remain head coach, because taking emotions out of all of this, based on the start of the season, I would probably predict losses against Newcastle and Arsenal, and then a draw against Leicester and a win against Wolves. But then 4 points there, that doesn't feel like enough. And I think this is what happens when managers get under pressure, because we then expect and need even more from them for us to have our confidence renewed in them, but also for us to then be in a decent enough situation and position in the league. So I think the pressure is going to keep ramping up. I really, really hope that we can pleasantly surprise ourselves, and that it's been a positive international break and we find our feet and we start linking up a bit better, and it was just a wobbly patch. I'm definitely reserving judgment for now, because I feel like it just could be a very interesting patch. And I think a key part of this is going to be knowing when to cut ties if Lopetegui isn't going to be the manager for us moving forward. Because like I said, you delay those 3 games, you might throw away those 9 points and then start a new head coach with really hard fixtures, which scares me a lot, because I don't think you can expect too much from that head coach. And then you're in the middle of hard fixtures. So what you're going to do, like sack another manager 10 more games in and then give them the very end of the season to try and rescue something? Feels like a big disappointment. After we wanted to move on from Moyes with the goal of stepping up, it doesn't feel like that's happened. I think if we could make any strengthening signings in January, that would help. Obviously, we've got the striker situation. We've got a lot of situations at West Ham at the moment, haven't we? But hopefully, it's not going to be as stressful as it feels like it could be at the moment. So that's what I'm hoping. So thank you so much, as always, for watching. Drop us a comment with your thoughts. Make sure you've given this a thumbs up. If you're new around here, subscribe to West Ham Network. We would love to be sending out regular videos to you. And have a brilliant day, whatever you may be up to. And until next time, have a great one. Come on, you Irons.